Hello and welcome to 100% Real with Ruby. Today I have Dr. Josh Smith here with me, and I could not be more excited to be able to speak to someone with such an intellect in the psych that is honestly the thing that sabotages us. Because as you heard in one of my most recent podcasts with Jared Hamilton, we usually sabotage ourselves when we're doing really well. And there's a lot of sabotage that happens subconsciously. And most of us don't even know what leads to it because we don't slow ourselves down to recognize the emotions we're experiencing, which then can turn into emotional eating or other emotional numbing because we don't want to sit with those uncomfortable emotions. And something that I experience with a lot of my girls is then those emotions turning into objectifying their body. My body's fat. I feel fluffy. And this can lead into so many other things. But we were talking just before I clicked record on when to know when you're past your limit, because a lot of us, coaches for clients, mothers for their children, people who have roles that look after a lot of people at work, people that just have a lot of interactions in their day, or just have this high perfectionism or whatever it is, it's really easy to push yourself past the limit and get to that red zone without even realizing. So with that, I'm going to let Dr. Josh Smith introduce himself and speak a little bit about the importance of setting me time, how to know when you're getting past your limit, and tools to help us deal with it.
Yeah, well, thank you very much for having me on. I'm excited to be able, it's always amazing to be able to connect with somebody, kind of around the world, all because of, it's the nice side of social media, right? Is to be able to connect with people you never would have met. But I'm Josh. I'm based in the US, and I'm a psychologist. I do a bit of different work. 3 days a week, I work in a pain clinic. So officially, I'm a pain psychologist there, and I work with all sorts of chronic pain conditions, anywhere from kind of surgical issues to nerve-based pain or degenerative, diseases, things like that. The rest of my time I have a private practice, and I do more general work. I work with individuals, couples, families, and that runs the gamut. I've had a history of working with trauma, and then I've done a lot of work with severe and persistent mental illness. So I've come through a bunch of different areas, but I'm excited to be here and talk about it. And I think self-care is, if you want to change any pattern, if you want to figure out a path, whatever it is, if you're feeling unhappy at work, if you're feeling unhappy with your fitness, if you're feeling unhappy with relationships, it really all starts with that self-care, self-awareness, taking the time to learn who you are, really understand not what we've been taught works for everybody, but like what works for you and what do you need and what's your schedule. And we don't often take the time to like really just look into that and see, where we're at and what those big hangups are, that the hurdles in the way of what you want.
Yeah, and if you don't know who you are, people end up telling you who you are. You end up living for others, and your goals don't even end up being your goals. So you end up striving for something that never feels fulfilling, because is that goal even yours to start with? What makes you want that goal? Why is this goal important? Are you just wanting this because it makes it look like that person's happy? And this is where it comes to, we tell ourselves that this thing we don't have, once we get this thing, it's going to suddenly make us happy. But how do you know that? Something I always say is, if you chase the outcome, but you don't actually become or grow or learn anything in the process, nothing's really changed, because you can wake up one day with your dream body and still not be happy because nothing else in your life has changed. So maybe you can speak more on how we can schedule in some me time and why it is just as important to nurture ourselves mentally to get to our physical goals, and how those physical goals are just manifest, like just things in the clouds, until we bring our mental side along with it.
Yeah, it's interesting because even the notion of like what's an ideal body, like an ideal fitness, it's so different for everybody. And there's plenty of things all over that tell us what is ideal. What is it supposed to look like? What is it? And people are often searching after like an aesthetic. How does it appear? Not how do they feel? And I can't tell you how many people I know who have really bent over backwards and killed themselves in some ways to get to this fitness level, and then found they felt like crap, that they felt not their best. And you know, it's often because what they're chasing is a standard or ideal that isn't even healthy for them, or is, you know, I mean, it's why I love like your podcast and your goal, and you know, there are other influencers out there that are putting out stuff to say like, hey, if you want to see what a degree of fitness that you see in magazines, movies, TV, all over the place, what does it actually take to get that? Because we like to present the end result and then act as if like, oh, just like everyday living and like occasion, like it, that it doesn't come with sacrifice and hard work. And like, so I love that there's more of a movement towards, hey, if you want to know what you need to do to get there, this is the reality. And then you have to decide, is that the lifestyle I want more than the physique? In terms of the self-care, you know, my go-to is I often use, and I think in metaphors and analogies, so I use them all the time. And my go-to is I use the example of a cell phone battery. And the idea is, right, we charge a cell phone overnight. That's how we charge with sleep. Our primary charge is like overnight. And if you imagine you have your own internal battery, well, most people, the hope is that you wake up at 100%. The reality is, I'd argue most adults don't. But if you have any issue, any chronic condition, whether it's pain, whether it's anxiety, stress, just regular worry, if you're a parent, not to put that in a chronic condition category, but truthfully, with all these responsibilities, if you are worried or thinking about them all the time, that's a little bit like pulling your phone charger, like on and off the charger all night long. So if the average person can wake up at 90 to 100%, if you're not sleeping well, or you don't go to bed on time, or well, that's less time on the charger. And I think of life, all of the things that we have to deal with are like the apps on your phone, right? So your health, finances, job, relationship, all of these are the applications on your phone, and they open up and they drain your battery. And the problem in a lot of ways is that like some apps you can't close. So we've all had those days where you wake up in the morning and you look at your phone and you're like 70% battery. Okay, like I can make it through my day with 70% battery. And then at the end of breakfast, you look at your battery and you're like 40%. Like I didn't even do anything. Like, how did I drop to 40? And now I can't make it through my day at 40%. And so that's where people look for little ways to kind of charge their battery. In terms of self-care are all the things that charge your battery, right? These are the things that help get you that additional 5, 10, 15%. Like, and it's really important to know what drains your battery and what charges your battery. And with people in your life, or people that are difficult or toxic people, the example I always use is, we've all had those days where at the end of the day, your phone rings and you look down and you see who it is. We do a quick internal calculation. Like, if this person's in a good mood, they could give me 5%. But if they're in a bad mood, they could cost me 20. So that person, their range is +5 to -20. If my battery is at 15%, I'm not going to answer the phone because it's too threatening. It's too scary that if they're in a bad way, that could take more energy than I have. So we screen it out. But the problem with that is, if you have a guilt app, if you are naturally caring or empathic, or, well, if you have guilt, if that app lives on your phone rings, even if you don't answer it, the guilt app can open up and take up 5% of your battery. And now you're at 10%. Now, where this comes into, how do you know when you're hitting low battery? Well, there are a couple things that happen, right? When you hit 10%, like your phone, your actual phone, it will go into low power mode and it shuts down non-essential applications, right? So all the things you don't need go away. So sometimes that's like calendar, schedule. All of a sudden, if somebody says, hey, what are you doing next month? It's like, I don't know. I can't open my calendar right now. I don't have the battery. The first two things I think we lose are filters and shields. And I know it sounds a little bit corny, but we use battery to filter normal communication, normal conversation. And you use more battery to filter that depending on where you are, right? You know, at home, you use less battery. At work, you have to use more. But that's where, like, if you've ever been at work or out or somewhere and somebody says, I got to get out of here before I say something I regret, it's because they're low battery. It's because they're low battery. And if the wrong person walks up to them and says something, they're going to snap. Instead, like, so if somebody comes and says, what time are we supposed to be there? And it's the 5th time they've asked. With a filter, you're going to go, hey, I told you we have to be there at 7, but you've asked me a few times. If you're low battery and no filter, you're going to blow up and you're going to be like, are you kidding me? You've asked me at 7. Like, there's no energy to filter it. So yeah.
I had a thought on the phone thing because it's fun. I have the exact same analogy as you for so many different things, but I just want to add to what you're saying. It's almost like when you walk out into the sun and you need to turn the brightness up on your phone. There are certain circumstances that are going to drain quicker versus if you're indoors and you can have a lower brightness on your phone, so you're able to actually conserve more energy.
Absolutely. And so in those settings, right, there's some people that drain your battery. It's why when you're really low battery, you know, if you were supposed to go out to dinner with a friend and you show up and there's 4 people there and you were expecting 1, for some people that's oh no, because that's going to require way more battery and I didn't budget for that. And so, and I use this to describe introversion and extroversion all the time. A natural extrovert charges socially. So end of the workday, you know, if an extrovert is at 10% and people are like, hey, let's go out and get drinks or go get dinner, they're like, oh, excellent. Yeah, I want to do that, because at the end of it, I will be charged. I'll take that 10, 15% I'm at now and I could double it. A natural introvert can actually be very social, but for them, socializing is a drain. So they can have a blast, but the second they arrive someplace, the question is, how much battery do they have to make it to the end? So the classic argument between like a couple where you have an introvert and an extrovert is if they go to a concert, at the end of the concert, the extrovert is going to be charged completely. They're going to be like 70%. And they're going to say, that was amazing. What do we do next? A natural introvert is going to be totally drained. And they're going to be like, you've got to be kidding me. It's amazing I made it through the whole concert. That was great, but I got to go home. I got to put on comfy pants and I have to not talk to anybody for like 3 days, because it's just a different system. But the low battery component, and I think for motivation, you know, you can use this for motivation. You can use it for, because one, your filters disappear. The shield component is that I think we all have really healthy defense mechanisms that we use to protect like our vulnerabilities and vulnerable spots. So if somebody says something a little bit annoying or a little bit obnoxious, right? Well, if you have enough battery, it hits the shield. It doesn't hit you directly. So you feel it, but you're going to be okay. With no filter and no shield, anything people say hits you directly. And the example I always use, you know, is like, so if I come home at the end of the day and I'm exhausted and my battery's at 15% and you know, I don't bring in the trash barrels, like, and I just sit on the couch and I feel guilty. If my wife comes home and she walks in the door and the first thing she said is, oh, hey, did trash pickup not come today? If I have no shields, no filter, right? Like in my mind, she has come in and criticized me, but in reality, she was just asking. So she, in my, my experience will be almost like she threw a rock at me and it hits me and I'm like, and I have no filter. So now I'm going to lash out. And I'm going to be like, you know, I had a tough day. And the first thing you do when you walk in the door is give me grief about So if she has enough battery, she's going to walk in, ask a simple question. I'm going to snap and she's going to be like, hey, like I legitimately just wanted to know, because you always bring them in. You know, if she's low battery, now we're in a fight, right?
Yeah.
Now, all of a sudden, she's going to be like, I don't know what you've been through. I walked in the door, asked you a simple question, and all of a sudden you're screaming at me. You know, and so it's becoming aware of like, those are some of the big things. When you start finding that you're on the phone with somebody and you're watching the clock and you're like, I swear to God, I need this phone call to end. Like that's because your battery's draining and you are in the red. And if your phone hits 0, you power down, your body will shut down. And So what that looks like is people will come home at the end of the day and they'll be sitting on the couch. And if your battery hits zero, it doesn't matter if you had another call to make or another email to send, your phone will just turn off. People will fall asleep. You'll sit down on the couch and people will pass out. And they'll just be like, oop, I fell asleep because my phone hit zero. My own internal battery hit zero.
I want people to take this metaphorically as well, in terms of how this leads to your whole motivation slump every single time you show up to your training. But I just want to give a simple execution exercise for this as well. I get my girls to do is to get a piece of paper and to literally write a list of all the things that you notice that Josh said, where you start to see that you are hitting a low power mode. And I want to quickly relate this to body image and body composition, because this is all about people chasing their ideal body, quote unquote. Two different things. Number one, I use the cell phone analogy all the time. It's your body goes on battery saving mode when you have so many apps open, like food focus, body focus.
Mm-hmm.
My body looks like this, my body looks like that. And then if you're also on low power mode, because that battery does not drain fully overnight if you've let it go on that long. It's going to take longer to charge up. You can't, like, that's going to lead into the next day and then the next day. So that's something to keep in mind as well, because then you're not going to show up to training. You're not going to want to do the things you want to do for your food. And something that I said to one of my girls this morning in her check-ins is, yeah, but here's the thing, because she replied to one of my responses. I can't remember the first thing I said, but she was like, I tend to always put the kids before me. And I'm like, but are you truly putting the kids before you? And are you truly giving them the name that you want to be if you're showing up low energy, feeling sorry for yourself, not having the zest that you want, always actually focusing in on your body, not being that vibrant, confident person that you actually want to be? And she's like, you know what? Thanks for giving me that push. You were so right. Because you can only really put them first. It's not about the time you spend with your kids, because quantity is nothing. It's about the quality time you give them. Everything, quality always wins. They are going to remember that vibrant you, the you that wants to show up in photos, but that's not going to happen if you're not showing up for yourself. And this relates to body as well. Like, your systems will start to shut down the more that you underfuel it. And think about the behavior that you start to act when your phone is power saving mode and you're out and you're not going to be home or near a power point to charge it for ages. How are you going to act? You're going to start being very thrifty. And that's exactly what your body does too. It starts being thrifty. You want to try to hoard energy from wherever you can. See if you can find a power point. That's where the fast food comes in. That's where the takeout comes in. That's where the chocolate comes in. That's something to keep in mind there too. But
I love that. It's such it's amazing advice. And I think that, it's funny because, years ago I had my own epiphany, the phrase, or, don't cry over spilled milk. I'm not sure if you've but the whole concept, we make it out to be that's about kids, that the kids shouldn't cry when they spill something, but it's not. It's about adults. It's about parents, right? Because kids wouldn't cry when they spill something if we didn't get mad, right? But the reason we get mad is because, well, if I budget 20% battery to get my kids dressed, ready, fed, and out the door for school, the second one of them spills something, it now takes 30%. And I didn't budget for that. So if I've budgeted my day so tightly that, like, I don't actually have the battery to make it through my day, I'm trying to bank on little opportunities to charge here and there, then that one moment where my kid spills something threatens my whole day. And now that's why there are times, like on a weekend, if I have all the time in the world, same thing. My kid spills something and I respond like the parent I want to be because I have enough battery. And I'm like, no big deal. We spill things. We'll clean it because I don't have to go to work. I don't have to. And then people start to give themselves grief of, why can't I react that way every time? Well, because my battery isn't the same every time. And so if you just kind of, if there's one day you plan on going to the gym and you're like, it was easy. Like, I got there, and I felt great. And then the next day you're like, I couldn't leave the house. I could barely put my sneakers on. And people start to give themselves grief about it. It's because likely your whole battery, all the apps that are open, the things you're worried about, the calls, it's different. So we can't expect a different result or the same result if it's a different set of circumstances.
That actually gave me something else to mention here as well. Like the way that your parents responded to you as a kid is kind of what leads to how you react now, how you are now. That feeds into the trauma as well. Like it is so powerful. I remember a lot of things that my parents said that have led to the psyche that I have now, but they don't do it intentionally. Like we aren't saying that it's not an on purpose thing. It's just that the way that they react in that such a situation, and sometimes they say things wanting the best for us, but in the long run, that's actually harmed us. But this isn't about you and how your parents affected you. I'm saying how you are now showing up to your kids as well. But it's something to keep in mind moving forward, that we have the power to change that. I hate it. I know that she might listen. I hate it when people say my brain is just wired that way. There's neuroplasticity. You can change your brain. I might actually get you to speak on that for the next topic. But you just summed up my whole first topic I wanted to bring up, which is this is the importance of setting me time just as much as you schedule everything else, because the other stuff that you schedule isn't gonna get done the way that it should be done, and you're not going to be happy with any of the boxes that you check if you're not coming to it in your peak state. Because I know that I'm not happy, and I'm always ruminating and thinking about things that I didn't do properly if I approached it in a way that I wasn't happy with. So that is the importance of having those buffer periods. And same when you schedule your calendar. You can't just schedule for every single friggin' hour in your day. Where's the buffer room for you? Because things usually
you can't do it.
Especially if you're neurodivergent like me and a couple of my clients, things usually take longer than we anticipate. So you need that buffer space. And I want to quickly touch on one more thing before I move on to that other thing I wanted to mention. Perfect and ideal is different for everyone, for the bodies especially. Like we can be in the same environment but have completely different lenses and perceptions based on how we were brought up, based on how we feel in this moment, based on all our influences from the day, and have a completely different experience. Even if we're side by side, we experience that same environment differently. And
totally agree.
And if you're not actually doing the work you need to do to get to this ideal body, quote unquote, you're not going to be happy with that. You're going to be more picky at that. You're going to keep having that same negative self-talk. I mean, this is a crude example, but while I was putting together a file for my girls on feeling fat, quote unquote, think about those in eating disorder recovery. They're like skin and bone, and they think they are fat. That goes to show you that feeling fat is nothing about the body. That is a crude example, but it actually shows you that case. And when I was dick skin lean to the point where people couldn't actually pinch my skin getting ready for stage, I thought that I was getting so fluffy and putting on so much weight in the space of 3 days post show. And I see with so many people once they finish competing, they say, I'm feeling fluffy, but, and they look like skin, bone, and muscle. Like you can't even pinch them. This is why it is so important.
Yeah, it's that self-care component is like across the board, right? Even just from modeling behavior, right? Modeling to your kids that saying, hey, I'm having a tough time right now and I need a minute. I need to go do this thing for my own health, for my own well-being. What you're modeling for them is you should do the same. When you recognize that you're having a hard time, when it's too much, when you need a break, you're learning to say, yeah, there are times where you need a break, where you need a pause. And I'm trying to, I read recently, and I think I had put something up about it, but Nick Krantz, I think it's Neurofit Nick might be his so Nick put something up, and it took me a second to find it, but he said if your kids adopted your habits, would they be healthy? Would you be happy if they had your habits, right? If they had your work-life balance, if they had your sleep schedule, if they had your social responsibilities, if you had to watch your kid do that, would you consider them healthy? And for me, I had this moment where I was like, the number of times that I forget to eat also fall into that neurodivergent category. So there are times that it'll be after lunch and it'll be like 3-4 o'clock, and I'm like, I have a headache, and my wife will be like, did you eat anything? And I'm like, nope, I didn't. Like, and I've seen all these videos, and it always makes me laugh anytime you see somebody like go, kind of go to the like, well, I went to the fridge, but then this happened, and then that happened, and then I just forgot to eat.
Do you know that that TV clip where he went to fix the light bulb, and then all these other things happened, but he never ended up fixing that light bulb?
Right.
Someone sent me that, because that's my typical day. Like, I go to do something, but then I see something. Like, this is why it's really important to be aware and know yourself. Like, for me, I have structured meal times that I need to eat at those times, and when I don't eat at those times, I get ravenous. I don't perform at my best. Like, for some people, you need to be regimented to the T. For other people, you don't. But the thing is, it's called structured flexibility, because that allows you to have flexibility outside of that, because you got the main work done when you need to get it done. And a lot of the time, it's not time management, it's energy management. You're managing your energy. But,
and it's funny when people ask me to describe kind of what an experience is like, of having ADHD or having any sort of executive functioning, or kind of that neurodivergent category. And I will often describe it to people like, well, I have a to-do list. It's always there. Sometimes things are almost highlighted in blue. That means that they're available to me to do. There are other times things are in gray. It's almost like when you go to fill something out and it's like, that button isn't clickable right now. And I will look at this to-do list and I'll see 3 or 4 really important things, but they're all gray. And I'm like, I want to do them. I know it's important to do it. And I can't almost get it. So all of a sudden I'm like, I can do laundry. I could mow the lawn. I could do all that. But could I pay those bills? Nope, that's grayed out. I literally just can't click it. And even worse than that, then if something lands on my desk that's even more important, that will make other items go blue, meaning that I can actually do them. So all of a sudden, paying those 2 bills will go blue, but I can't do my taxes. And it's like, what just happened? It took a more important thing to open up these other things. And throughout most of my life, I had the luxury of, like, when you're in school, it's why, like, I remember, like, some of the research I did. I remember my doctor asked me once, like, when did you do most of your writing for your dissertation? And I said mostly between like 11 p.m. and 4 a.m. because that is when those items kind of went blue, and now I could do them. And I was like, oh, be midnight, and I'd be like, look at that. I guess I'm going to be able to do some writing right now. But I have kids and a job, and I can't do that anymore. And so I've had to learn, what do I have to do when certain things are grayed out? And I have to admit it and acknowledge it and be like, I know what I have to do in order to get those into that blue category. If I just fight against it and keep trying to click the unclickable button, I will just sit there in paralysis. I won't do anything.
This is actually perfect, because you're leading into the next thing that I want to ask you as well. But this isn't just a neurodivergent thing. This is what people do when they're approaching their goals. You're looking at the mountain. Everything at the top of the mountain is in gray. That is why you're so overwhelmed. So what you're doing is you're trying to think of all these other things that you need to do. You're thinking of, I don't know whether you read The Gap and the Gain. I struggle with reading. That's a neurodivergent. My neurodivergence doesn't allow me to read. So I have to listen to a lot of interviews, like things that are interactive is how I learn. So I listen to a lot of interviews with, like, about The Gap and the Gain, and it's, people are so focused on this big gap between where they are now to where they want to be versus all that they've gained and all that they have to gain in the process. But seeing it as this big gap, everything that you want to do is here. You add this here, you add this here. That's all going to be in gray. You're going to feel so overwhelmed with everything you have to do. It's almost like, what is that one mountain step that makes everything else available? Just like Josh said, this is how this applies to your life. Because a lot of the time we have this whole to-do list of things that we want to do, but then there are other things that keep distracting us. Because if we link this back to the start of the conversation, God, I'm in love with this conversation. But if we link this back to the start of the conversation, where we said sometimes our goals aren't our own, that's automatically making those things on our to-do list gray, because we don't have a strong enough drive to do them. And a lot of the time people have an away focus. I don't want to feel so depressed. I don't want to feel so bad about my body. That isn't enough to drive you long term. You need to have pull goals. I want to feel this way. That is something that is going to sustain you forever, because you can't pick up little Mr. Google Man and drop him onto your destination. You need to drive to the destination, because you can get to the destination, have no freaking idea where you are, because you haven't, it's almost like acclimatization. You need to acclimatize yourself to that, because otherwise you're going to self-sabotage yourself back to where you were before, because you don't, that place isn't yours, that kind of thing, and you don't know how to maintain that.
And I like that notion of, right, if you can see the 30 steps ahead of you, well, if only the next 1 or 2 are available and the rest are grayed out, well, if you focus on all of them, it can be paralyzing. Learning to say, hey, I understand where I want to be. I understand the number of steps, but let me focus on the next step. What is the thing I can actually do? But in order to figure out motivation, it also comes back down to that battery and being really honest with yourself about how much battery certain things take. And the challenge for me is that, some people that really love exercise, right? And so if you use that battery analogy, just as an example, for me, when I was in grad school, the gym that I was going to, randomly one day, I stopped going to the gym, and I couldn't figure out why. I didn't have this framework then, but here's how I would put that battery in. I had learned I needed at least 15% battery to get to the gym, just to get there. Once I got to the gym, I would get back, 20, maybe 25% battery, which means going to the gym was a gain of 5% or 10% battery. I stopped going to the gym when the gym was in like a strip mall, and at the end of it, there was a small convenience store that got bought out. They put in a huge grocery store, which took up a bunch of parking, and it brought way more people. All of a sudden, parking at the gym was a pain in the ass, and there were never spots, and people would park on the grass, and I didn't know, but what happened is because of the parking, it now was taking me 20 to 25% to get to the gym, which means some days, all of a sudden, going to the gym was a battery loss. Because of that, and because I wasn't conscientious about it, or I didn't know, what ended up happening is I just stopped going, because I would want to go to the gym, and I'd be like, nothing I usually do is working, because I needed more than 15% battery. And so I think sometimes what happens is, for some people, well, working out at home takes less battery. So they're like, oh, if I can put equipment in my house, working out, I only need 5% battery. For other people, having a home gym tanks their battery because they feel guilty all the time, and they don't want that. For other people, working out on your way home, where you're like, I didn't have to go home and go back out, that takes less battery. For others, packing a gym bag and having to. So it's really knowing what works for you. And some people, I think what happens is, if you get home at the end of the day and your battery's at 10% and you need 15% to get to the gym, if you just say, why can't I go? How come I'm not motivated? Why can't I get myself out? That opens up the guilt, shame, and negative self-talk, which will drain your battery and get you further from your goal.
And
it's learning to be
eating.
Right. And now it leads you right to this, well, now I feel awful that I didn't go. Now I didn't. The solution there is learning to identify where your battery is and knowing what gives you a 5% charge. So it might be you come home one day and you say, yep, yesterday I came home, my battery was at 40%. So I had no problem getting to the gym. Today, my battery's at 10%. So before I leave to go to the gym, I have to find an activity or something that gives me 5% battery. Then I'll have enough. But if I give myself grief and I just have all this negative self-talk where I'm saying, what's wrong with me and how come I can't do it and what am I doing wrong? That drains you. That gets you farther from your goal. And then people get caught in this binary thinking where they're like, well, I'm bad. I ruined today. Because I'm not going to the gym, today is a fail. The second your brain registers a fail in this binary system, well, now Nothing I do can make it a success, which means no matter what, it's a fail. That's when people have trouble fighting, the food or the binge eating, or because they're like, well, it's a fail because I couldn't get to the gym. So now whether I eat ice cream and, sit here and eat chips and do whatever, it's all a fail. So it's getting out of that mindset of that it's either a success or failure, right? There are days you can show up to work and somebody brought something in like a cake and you're like, you know what? I wanted it. I ate it. If you register that as the whole day is a fail now, getting motivated to do anything positive after that is going to be near impossible. It's learning to say, wait, that's not a fail. I chose to eat a piece of cake. Now I can still make tons of decisions that are good for me. That's not a fail. It's not a bad. It's not. And it's learning to kind of really take a note of where's your battery and know what are these little charges, the little things that get me back to like what I need to be able to, like, sometimes it's going for a walk. I mean, it's just kind of a like, well, I only have 6% battery. Well, then the gym's out of my reach today. Fine. Well, I could go for a walk. That only takes 3% battery and it gets me 4% back. Well, then you came home. If you're at 6% battery, you go for a walk, you're going to come back at 7% battery. You still don't have enough battery to get to the gym, but you did what was within your grasp. And then you got to give yourself credit for that, as opposed to just seeing what you didn't do.
You skipped right ahead to my third question, which I'm going to actually read out as it is, because this is why oh my God, this is perfect. But I want to quickly say, this is also the same with going to the gym. Like, it's not all or nothing. I have a girl celebrating her wins at the moment because she's showing up and she's only doing a quarter of the session because she knows she can't do the full session in that day. Yep. Like, that's all she has energy for. Whereas in the past, she would never show up, but she showed up to all those sessions to do whatever she could do. And that is what matters. That's not a fail. That is a win. A fail is, again, see, your perception of fail and win is a perception. It's a lens. And how you view fail and success determines your long-term success. The question
absolutely
I want to bring into this, that I want you to actually buffer up with it, is living in congruence for better results that last. And the way that she asked the question as well is, one mistake, one error does not have to compound and take on a life of its own. We have a tendency to see a mistake or bad choice as binary, this all or nothing success or failure. And once we register failure, that only just leads to more and more decreased motivation. So that, if you want to link this to the stairs, it's almost like we allow ourselves to just slide back down instead of realizing maybe we do need to take a step back to allow us to keep climbing. And I also like to say, sometimes you can't see the next 3 steps. You can only see the next one. Are you just not going to take it because you can't see the other ones that are there and you don't know where it's heading? This is where a coach can come in, because then you can have confidence that those steps you're taking are the right ones. So just take that one step, then take the next one, because the other ones will start to become clearer and clearer the more that you build that momentum. And this is actually a really powerful analogy. I'm happy that I just thought of it. But that is what a coach gives you. They give you that certainty. They give you that confidence that the staircase you are climbing is actually the right one if you have a good coach, because there are a lot of quote unquote trainers that are coaches, but no. But once you have that faith, just focus on that step ahead. If you can't see that step ahead and you need to take a step back, that is still progress, because what's the alternative? Sliding back down on your ass and having to start over again? And I don't know whether, no, it wasn't you. I must have heard it somewhere. Starting is shit. Starting is hard. Starting over is bullshit. If you can avoid starting over as much as you can, avoid it. And the only way to do that is to not quit. So winding it back to that question, to live in congruence and life being a series of choices. But in the moment, this is the way she also framed the question. In the moment, everything always feels so big. It even feels bigger. It feels even bigger when you struggle. How do you alter mindset around drowning in decisions, despite what you feel the size is, but being able to break them down into more manageable steps?
Oh, I love all this. All right, so I'm going to come back to that, I promise. I just don't want to gloss over some of the things that you said that I really loved. Was like, one, the client you're talking about that came in and did what they could. Not only is that not a fail, that is a success at a whole nother level, right? Because look at it this way. When I was in college or university, right? Like I had hours in my day. So if I worked out for half an hour, it wasn't that big a deal because I could have worked out for 3 hours. If I work out for half an hour now, it's not the same accomplishment. This is a bigger accomplishment right now than it would be then. So why am I comparing myself to to my version when I was 20, right? And so the notion of I'm going to show up and do whatever I can, it's inspiring. That's not just like, and that's what I wish that we could just flip a switch and fix this mentality of not only is that not a fail, that's amazing. That is like
that to anyone else either, because that, like, I just want to add that into what you're saying. You can't compare that to someone in their 20s if you're in your 40s and you have this whole thing to look after as well.
right. And so, and then in terms of the question that came up, I do think that is where finding a coach, legitimately, there's a lot of similarity between finding a therapist and finding a coach. There's a lot of variability. There's a lot of different approaches. And it's important to find a coach or a therapist that is a good fit for you and your style. Right? A coach is not a bully. A coach is not somebody who's supposed to just like make you feel bad. If you find the right coach, in those moments where you're saying, I can't see the next step, that is when you need a coach. That's when you need somebody who can say, great, based on where you're at right now, the realities, not the pretend, not the, oh, if I had everything available to me and all the time in the world, but the reality of your life right now. What is available to you? That's how you learn, right? Because if you want it to be sustainable, you don't just need to know what is my workout routine when everything in my life is perfect. Okay, you also need to know what is my workout routine when, I'm stressed. What is my workout routine when I'm traveling? What's my workout routine if one of my kids is sick? Like, it's not one routine for the rest of my life. It's the more I can learn, the more ways I can learn how to kind of help take care of myself emotionally and physically, the better. And in terms of the gym stuff and the comparison, that comes to like one of the things that we had talked about, when we were messaging is the whole notion of anchor points, right? Like, and how do we measure success and failure? And I think one of the biggest problems is, one, we compare ourselves to other, right? We love to look at other people. Like, everybody has done it at one point in time or another at the beach or at the pool, where you're looking around the pool and what you're looking for is kind of what do I think I could look like realistically if I worked a little harder? Like, what physique am I? And who do I think looks similar to me? And who do I almost think I hope I don't look like that person? Nobody talks about that. But we don't do realistic comparisons. And people give themselves so much grief. And one of the things that happens is, especially with fitness, people who have worked out or exercised in the past, and actually not even just for fitness, we compare ourselves to other, but we do a self-comparison that's not fair. And I think we compare ourselves to two iterations of self, right? One is, in any particular category, we love to search our memory for when was I at my absolute peak or best in this one category. So if I walk into the gym tomorrow, and I haven't been to the gym in 10 years, my brain is going to go to, when I was working out consistently, what is the absolute maximum I could deadlift? Now it's going to say, and let's say it was 225. And I'm like, that's the most I've ever been able to deadlift. And I walk into the gym 10 years, no exercise. And I have tens on the end of the bar because I can't pick the bar up off the floor. That's the only reason I even put weight on it. And that's all I can deadlift. We have a tendency to say, well, look at where I am now compared to when I was at my absolute best in this one zone. But what if that was 25 years ago and it was before I had a knee injury or a back injury or a shoulder injury, before I had kids, before I had a job, before I had I'm now comparing where I'm at right now in this moment to a past version that that had a whole different set of scenarios and circumstances. And we also love to cherry pick when we've been the best at anything, parenting, work, and we combine that. And then we think, whenever I've been the best at all of this, I should be able to do that in one day. I should be the best parent I can be. I should be the best at work I could be. I should be the best friend I could be. I could be the best athlete. I'm supposed to do that all in a day.
Can I get you to talk about?
It's like a fantasy version of self. It's not real.
Yeah, you mentioned something really important. Can you talk about how memories are not real?
Well, memories get so incredibly distorted, and unfortunately, they alter based on the backdrop. And that means that, how many people do you know? How many people have you worked with who at some point in time have looked at a picture of themselves from 5, 10, 15 years ago and said, I was so miserable then. I was so miserable and I thought I looked awful. And I look back now and I'm like, how could I have not appreciated that? Because at the time, there was always that little bit more. Now you look back at it and go, uh-oh, I have a whole different perspective on it. So memory changes. And sorry, you said that you've been in that, that category.
Yeah, both of those actually. I used to compete nationally for powerlifting as well. And now even I used to have triples on the bar in kilos. So I used to have 120 squats, 140 squats. I used to have 170 on my deadlift. And now even getting past 85 is a miracle for me on my squats. And I just did that the other day. If I compare myself because I always look at my on this day on Facebook, if I look at that with the lens of why am I so shit right now? Why can't I get to there? I'm so pathetic. I have to relearn all of this again, and I'm struggling to get this on the bar. I can't even get 140 off the floor, and I used to do 140 for 10 reps. That isn't a fair comparison. And then if I also look back, because I also was a figure competitor, if I look back at photos from when I competed there, one of my photos, I looked so damn good. And then I continued to chase leaner. And then my following comps, I just look like a skeleton with muscle, and it is so unappealing. Well, it looked good-ish on stage, but I'm like, if only I just looked fuller. But I remember the mindset I was in. I'm like, I can't eat too many carbs because then I'm going to look too watery. I'm going to look too fat. I'm not going to look good enough. I might be too flat. I remember all those thoughts, but now looking back on it, I'm like, I needed to carb up before then. I needed to freaking coach myself like the way that I coach people and do what I need to do instead of being so scared of blowing it out the other end. And that's the thing, in retrospect, I could see things memories are just not real, just like he said. And I heard this on a podcast, which is why I really wanted you to touch on it, is because our experiences in the meantime and how we are now influence that. And I wanted you to talk a little bit more on neuroplasticity, but also with the whole coaching thing. We are on your side as coaches. And if all you focus on is the negatives and the outcomes and stuff like that, it is our job to reroute you. But a lot of people also don't have the emotional regulation or the tools to handle the emotions of being directed in that direction. So they might see it as an attack. So you need to check yourself as well before you see something as an attack and realize that we are on the same team. Because once you realize that you are on the same team, then you can actually start to focus on the things that matter, because it's those little things that lead up to it. Because if all you're focusing on is the other stuff, then that is what gets highlighted. Where you focus is where energy grows. That's where energy grows. That's what gets expanded. If you're focusing on not feeling negative, that negative is still going to grow because that's the focus. So let's talk about neuroplasticity.
Well, it's so amazing how our perspective can shift something so dramatically. And one, the question that you had posed before that somebody had written in about, one error not cascading, right? I love that, right? And it's funny, I put something up about this recently where I was basically just saying right, unfortunately, you don't ever want to make, we make choices all the time. And, they're not good or bad. They're not right or wrong. They're just decisions. And when you get locked into one, well, all of a sudden people will make one error and then say well, now I'm down this path and it's almost like, well, I already made that choice. I made that choice yesterday and now I'm stuck with it. And it's like, why can't you revise that choice and say, okay, I thought this was going to be a good call. It wasn't. And I'm going to change my mind and make a different decision. It's knowing that like that your choice point is not, we don't have just one big choice in any given moment. They're all just dozens of choices. If you decide that you want to go out with friends, just because you decided, on a Tuesday that you want to go out on Friday, people get stuck in this like, well, but I said yes. And now that I said yes, I'm stuck with that. And so now if on Friday I'm not feeling great and my battery's low and what I really want is to go home, relax, work out, and just have an easy night. Well, I said yes on Tuesday. And now it's Friday and like I'm stuck with that choice. So then people say like, all right, I got to go out. Now you're going out and your battery's at 20, 25%. You're going to watch your battery meter like a hawk. Because the whole time you're like, socializing becomes more stressful because, well, if my battery's at 80% and somebody says something obnoxious and it takes up 5% of my battery, if I'm at 80%, okay, I'm just going to walk away from you. Same person, same comment, same 5%. If my battery's at 20%, that is a quarter of my available resources. And now I'm 5% away from low battery. So people will go out socially and all of a sudden be like, I'm stressed. I don't want to talk to anyone. I don't want to be, because they're low battery. And because they made a decision on Tuesday about going out, they don't remember, wait a second, in this moment, I can say, you know what? I came. And, I probably should have said no on Tuesday, but I didn't. Who cares? Then I felt like I had to come. So I did. Turns out maybe I should have said no. I still don't have to stick with that. I can now say, right, I agreed to come on Tuesday. I followed up on that, but I am unhappy right now. I don't want to be here. I want to go home. Then go home. Make a different. If once you get locked into, I made this choice like before, and now I have to suffer it. People will just stay on this path that is so not good for them because they don't want to have to say, okay, I made a choice with the info I had 4 days ago. I have a different feeling now. And I think in terms of that, like neuroplasticity, growth mindset, however we want to talk about it, it's knowing and understanding that we have patterns, we have habits, we have default ways to approach things. That's okay. We also have to learn these are adjustable. And most of those adjustments take a lot of honesty with yourself. You don't have to tell anybody else. It takes a lot of self-awareness to be able to say, hey, I know what the things I struggle saying no are. I know that I prioritize my kids or my spouse ahead of my own needs. I know. And then it's being able to say like, well, if I want to change that pattern, I'm going to be uncomfortable. And how do I learn to be comfortable with that discomfort? How do I learn, if I'm somebody who loves to go to the gym, but I also know when I go, it makes my wife's life more difficult. I know she's now home with both kids and I feel guilty. Okay, well, that means that my own people pleaser nature, my own desire to kind of help the collective more at my own sacrifice, means that I have guilt about going to the gym. And now all of a sudden, I know I'm going to prioritize that. Well, if I want to break that pattern, I have to be willing to admit to myself, in order to do this, I have to own that that's my issue, not put it on my wife, not make it out to be like she's giving me grief because I want to go out, not be like, I have to tolerate that she might go, okay, it's going to suck for me, but like, and I have to be able to say, right, but I need to do that. I need to make a change. I'm uncomfortable because it's different than what I would normally do. You have to sit with some of that discomfort in order to change that pattern.
So important. I want to park that because I want to come back to it, but I want to quickly go back to what you said before. My God, this we can talk for hours. I have 3 more things after this, but this one will take a little bit. If you have a history of making errors, if you base your future outcomes on past predicaments, you're always going to set yourself up for failure because you're going to keep waiting for that next shoe to drop. And you're going to keep using that one moment of failure as this isn't working. You're not going to stick with it long enough. And I heard someone say everything is trial and error. You're always going to fail. You have to give something at least 30 days of giving your absolute best before you decide to ditch it. Yes, but people have a fear of wasting time from doing a certain thing. And I know you mentioned the sunk cost effect as well, which I'll bring up later on as well. Actually, I'll write that down, because what's the worst that can happen? Because you're wasting time anyway doing what you're doing and not getting anywhere. People expand, people have such a warped perception of time. They expand the in the moments to be so catastrophic. But in the how many years do we live? It's almost like people are in such a rush to get to nowhere that we're not actually experiencing life. We're just going through them. I have this saying that, are you just going through the motions, avoiding the emotions, and not allowing yourself to experience life? I made this quote ages ago. I just stopped saying it because I'm trying to stop being so psychologically focused and be more physically focused. But you made a post and it relates to everything you said. If you spend so much time focusing on all that went wrong, all that you don't like, if you think about, I'm going to relate this to the body in a second, all that you don't like, you will have a negative experience and not even realize or notice the things that are happening for you, the good things. You're not going to enjoy any of that experience. And the reason this is so freaking important and why you will never get your body outcomes, you will never actually, we haven't once mentioned something physical about the body, but your dream body is on the other side of all of this. Because when you show up for yourself, when you're able to regulate your emotions, when you're able to set up your life in a way that serves you, in a way that makes you feel good about yourself. Because when you feel good, you want to keep doing the things that make you feel good. When you eat, when you move to feel better, when you eat to feel better, when you have nourishing relationships, when you have things outside of just focusing on your body that fill your cup and make you feel good, you're not focused so much on all these numericals of hitting this, hitting that. That's only another driving force. Because that same scale focus, that same body focus can be translated to trying to chase your next PB, and that isn't going to serve you anyway, because that's going to lead to empty fulfillment. Who are you becoming in the process? And you can't just keep getting stronger, otherwise you'd have world powerlifters freaking squatting 700 kilos a ton. It doesn't happen that way. But I wanted to bring this also into, you mentioned going to the gym and having that guilt. And this is something that a lot of people listening to this podcast would experience with their kids, with everything else, not putting themselves first. Or even I know one of the biggest things that a lot of girls I speak with struggle with, which I want you to bring into this, is going out to social settings and choosing what they know is right for them. So this is about boundaries, especially in relationships with partners, with families, especially when they aren't on the same path as you, as well as boundaries around these eating patterns and eating habits.
Oh man, we're going to need a couple more podcasts. Truthfully, when you're in a system, family system, friend group, an area that you grew up with, systems tend to resist change. And everybody plays roles. Everybody has how do you fit into your family? How do you fit into, and when you want to change your role, when you want to change your approach or how you look at it, there's resistance from the group because they don't want that, especially if you changing your role makes their life more difficult, right? If you are the peacekeeper in your family, you're the go-between between parents, siblings, cousins, if you're the one that always tries to keep everybody, well, if you say, hey, I don't want to do that role anymore, all of a sudden the system doesn't know what to do because they want you in that role. So there's pressure. And I mean, not to, outright, I think the first step in that kind of change is giving fewer fucks. And I know there's all sorts of, things but it's being able to say, you know what, if I go out to eat, and I'm in a family that thinks pasta is comfort food, and if I don't eat it, I'm going to get grief about it. It's being able to say, you know what? I don't need you to understand. I don't need to explain it. I don't need to engage in any conversation about it. It's okay to just say, no, thank you. And not have to give a why, or not get into all those other pieces, and the notion of a perfect body, what's so funny is I would argue for most of us, a perfect body is living in a happy body, right? Living in a state where you're like, yep, I vacillate between happy and content. And it has nothing to do with physicality. It has to do with where am I most at peace? Where can I really have a good laugh? Where can I just be myself? And what's interesting is for a lot of people to feel their most content, their most fulfilled, they need a certain amount of physical health also. And I think when you fix that, when you fix your environment, your interactions, the people that you're around, you take the time to cultivate a life of things that are fulfilling and meaningful, the physical piece becomes easier because now it's just another thing that you want to try and enhance how you feel and how you can access all those things in the world. It's not about a specific muscle tone or a specific look. That's what we focus on. And your explanation of kind of like, the how long are we here on this earth, or, the way I look at it and the way I talk about that is I think there's a ton of social pressures, a ton. There's this pre-prescribed timeline that we're all held to, and it's bullshit. It's this notion of like, okay, well, you go to school, well, and then, after school you get a job, or you go on to university. Like after university, you get a job, or you go on to an additional grad program. Eventually, you have to get a job, and then you meet somebody, and you buy a house, and it's this timeline, and maybe it works for most people. The problem is, I think of it a little bit like if you were in a river and it has a current, and there is a general current. People move through this at a roughly similar pace. You can go on the outside of the river and take a little longer. When you slow down, when you try and have a different pace, that is when you feel the current pushing you, right? That's when we feel this societal pressure of, no, you have to catch up. And on top of that, you then see your peer group floating downriver, which gives the impression they're ahead of you. But ahead of you where? Like, where are they going? What's the like? But it feels like I need to catch up. So I need to rush to do this and rush to do that. And I feel like if this was a short film, when they zoom out, it would just be a big circle. And it's like, yeah, you're not getting to some magical destination quicker if you bought a house 2 years before your friend bought a house. You're not getting to some magical destination quicker if you get a promotion in 8 months instead of 12, but then you did nothing in your life for 8 months other than work. This is just kind of what we're in. And yeah, there's a lot of societal pressures and then your own internal pressure of seeing all these other people and where they are. It's irrelevant. Everybody's journey has to be different. And gaining some comfort with the fact that like there isn't one path, there isn't one way to do it. And like, okay, so if somebody started their own, weight loss journey 10 years ago, the brain goes, I knew it. I should have started it 10 years ago. Well, okay, but I didn't because life was happening. I am where I am right now. That's all I can really address. That's all I can really adjust. Giving myself grief about what past me did or didn't do doesn't help anybody. And I also think, we've all heard it in some iteration somewhere, this notion of like how you treat yourself versus how you treat your best friend. And it's amazing, right? Like if your best friend called you and told you like, you know what, I had a personal training appointment today and it was booked for an hour and I could only do 20 minutes. And like, if they start saying, I feel awful, I feel terrible, I can't believe I didn't do it and I didn't do this, you would stop them and be like, whoa, give yourself a break. Like, what are you talking about? You got to the gym. That's amazing. Like, you did what you could. That's unbelievable. But not to ourselves. To what we give our friends in terms of support and leeway and guide, like, is so different than how we talk to ourselves. Right? So that person who's saying, hey, I always prioritize my kids, my spouse, my family, my job, right? Like, okay, if their friend called them and said, hey, this is the most I could do, it wouldn't be like, well, you're failing. No, but so then why be so mean to yourself? Why give yourself grief? Like, I think when you start giving yourself shit about a choice, a decision, pause and ask how you would talk to your best friend if they presented the exact same thing and see if it's even close to how you expect yourself. And I've said this to coaches before who coach people and help people change their lives and then don't do that same self-care for themselves. They're helping take care of other people, and at times they sacrifice their own well-being because they're like, well, I have a little bit more of a handle on how to maintain this, so I can now flex, or I can kind of relax more on me. And then it comes out of their sleep, or it comes out of their personal life. And they're like, well, I talked to 3 clients today. Each one of them needed an extra 40, 50 minutes. And like that came out of this. So I canceled going out with my friends, and that's where I moved my gym time. And it's like, wait, so once again, you as a trainer, as a coach, are now putting other people ahead of yourself. And, and it's just so important to really take a look at that and figure out, what do you want? And, and not what other people want, no shoulds, no like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. It's being able to say, hey, you know what? I have a goal. That's awesome. And I've set a pace. And if that pace is too fast, okay. Instead of that being a fail, if you say, hey, I want to go to the gym 3 times a week, and you try that out and you're like, you know what? That just doesn't work for me. Instead of being like, that's a fail, it's saying, great, that is very useful data. That's super useful information. Like, a coach loves nothing more than somebody calling and saying, hey, I tried this. I need to decrease my Wednesday workout to 20 minutes. I need to figure out a way to do it at home. That's just too, and I'm traveling. So what can we do on a travel schedule? Like, I don't know a single coach that wouldn't be like, that's the best day ever because you just gave me data and we can make it work now. Instead of coming in and be like, I didn't do it. I totally screwed up and I can't figure out how to make it work. You're not letting somebody down. You're helping figure out a path to like your own life, your own productivity.
You need to give more detail with stuff like this, because it's like we have nothing to go off. If you're just saying I can't do that, well, it's like, okay, so how can we make this work for you? But also at the same time, remember what I said before in that, did you give it enough time? A lot of people don't give things enough time. Of course, it's not going to work for you. It's completely different than what you used to do. Like, do it for long enough before you say something doesn't work for you. That is the first rule. And I know that Josh agrees with that. But give something
100%.
Give something long enough before you say it doesn't work for you. No, I tried to go to the gym 3 times this week. It doesn't work. Well, have you tried long enough? Have you put things down? I have a saying that also goes, you can't pick things up without taking things off your plate first, or with your hands full. You need to actually put things down in order to pick things up. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a catastrophe. And we all expect too much, too fast, and the expectations, the perfectionism. It's like, be real with what's achievable. Actually, that's a really good point to tie this up on. We have to do another podcast and talk more about boundaries. But I want you to tie it up with that, because this is all literally like the thing that stops us from doing everything that we mentioned in this podcast, from doing the things that matter, that actually get you to where you want to be, which I say actually way too many times. But it's the fact that we're in such a rush to circle jerk the block, to go around in circles around the revolving door, but we never actually make any forward direction because we're in such a rush. We don't slow down to see that we're on a path that leads nowhere. We're on a path that leads to no real fulfillment. So that's a good thing for us to end on. So let's just tie it up with a bow with that.
Yeah, I love it.
I want you to actually tie that part up with a bow on.
I mean, you just tied it up beautifully. I mean, but it's I think the pace and the expectation, that notion of like how quickly or how like, it's that same thing of like, what do we run into? What's the like, and expecting things to happen that quickly, holding yourself to this like all or nothing standard. It is a recipe for feeling like every single day you're failing in some way, shape, or form. And everybody's pace has to be different. There is no like rush to it. And there is no like, well, I tried it, it didn't work. It's try it and revise it. Like, if it didn't work, it wasn't right for you. Like, and it's not sustainable. And that's not going to be the approach. And that's okay. But I think wanting some of those like quick wins, it's not easy when you're trying to get so many different things done. And what you're really looking for isn't a how do I get there quick and have that initial boost, right? It's really saying like, okay, like I have to persevere. I have to push through that. And the only way to do that, I think, is to celebrate every step of that, not based on specific goals or numbers, or just kind of the like, hey, if I can give myself credit for, I feel better, even emotionally, knowing I'm working towards this goal. The rest will come. The results will come at some point in time. You know, the consistency factor and feeling good about it, being able to feel good about and celebrate whatever it is that you're doing, you know, is always going to be a quicker path. It's not rushing through. It's not trying to kind of cram in more in your life than you can. It's that battery. It's recognizing we have a finite amount of battery. We don't have infinite battery. And if you budget for infinite battery, then there's always going to be stuff you don't get done. It's realistically, you know, it's almost like post-surgery, right? We all want to feel as good as quickly as possible. The number of people I know who will have some sort of procedure and the doctor will say, hey, ideally, you should be back to, you know, 80% in like 4 to 6 months. Most people, they do the same thing. They go, all right, well, 4 to 6 months, 80%. Well, I think I'll be 4 months, right? You know, now what's that based on? I don't know. I just want to assume I'll be better quicker. And if I'm supposed to be at 80% at 4 months, well, then by 2 months, shouldn't I be at least at 50, 60%? And all of a sudden it's like, wait, I just had surgery and the doctor said 4 to 6 months before I'm at 80%. And all of a sudden at like a 2 or 3 month check-in, people will go in and go, something's wrong because I'm not feeling good at all. Like, and you said I would be at like 50% at 3 months. And the doctor's like, what? When did that happen? Like nobody. So unfortunately, we tend to do these calculations in the wrong direction. And we work out the math and say, great, I'm going to work out 4 days a week. I'm going to work out for 2.5 hours each time. I'm going to totally change my diet. Like, and it's like, wait, that's, and then I'm going to get these magical results in 3 months. And it's like, wait, you've just outlined a totally impossible, not sustainable system. And now in 3 months, when you're like, I don't know what happened, I did none of those things. Well, yeah, because you tried to cram it in and it doesn't work. Like, that's not realistic. It's taking a real look at it and saying, I want this to be something that I can celebrate and be proud of no matter what. And I really believe that that's where you're going to get a better outcome overall emotionally and physically if the goal is just saying like, I will feel better if I start to make these changes. Not what the look of the change is.
I absolutely love all of that. That is such a perfect way to end this podcast. And I hope everyone listening to this took some notes. I highly encourage you guys to listen to it again. Yes, it's a long one, but it's one that's going to bring you so much more value into everything that you do, give you purpose so that you can do what you do on purpose, with purpose, to get better outcomes and feel more fulfilled in that. So with that, where can I direct people to find you? Where can people find you?
The best way to find me right now is on Instagram at drj smith. So it's drj period smith. Yeah, it's probably that's right now probably the quickest, easiest way.
Perfect. And I highly recommend you guys actually give him a follow. If I haven't already told you to follow him, which I told so many people to already, I highly recommend his content. I recommend watching his videos, his stories. He puts out a lot of valuable nuggets that can make you think twice about certain situations, but you also need to slow down to be receptive to things many of the times, because things don't hit the same way if, like we talked about, you're coming at it with a phone that isn't in a prime state. So with that, thank you for listening. Listen to us over, give us a message if anything resonated, recommend this to a friend, rate the podcast. And with that, you will hear me next week.